Welcome back to the deep dive. So if you're a leader today, you are living and breathing those four infamous letters. VUCA.
Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It's the new normal.
Absolutely. And it
Yeah.
means the playbook that got you promoted last year, it's probably already being rewritten.
Yeah.
If you can't keep up with that, you don't just, plateau.
hmm
You can become a liability.
And that inability to keep pace is really why we're diving deep into learning agility today. This isn't just about IQ or your resume.
Yeah.
Learning agility is this critical capacity to learn really fast from new, novel, sometimes overwhelming experiences. And then, this is the key apply, that learning to solve challenges you have never seen before. It's all about behavioral flexibility in action.
And when you look at the numbers on leadership development, the stakes are just, well, they're undeniably high. Organizations are spending hundreds of billions a year.
Over 366 billion globally.
Exactly. And yet, the failure rate for high-potential leaders is still stubbornly high, around 40%. They get into these new roles, and the old methods just don't work anymore.
It just points to this massive gap, right? Traditional development, it often misses how adults actually learn and, more importantly, how they adapt their behavior. We need to go past the theories and look at the hardware,
The actual brain.
the neurobiological foundations of change.
And that is our mission for you today. We're using research, specifically from Williams and Nowack and a lot of other evidence, to look at the actual brain structures, the neural pathways that support real adaptability. We're going to uncover some neuroscience hacks to leverage your brain's own plasticity.
Think of it as a shortcut to rewiring your brain for elite performance in this chaotic world.
So our roadmap for you is super actionable. First, we'll lay out the business case. Then we'll map the 5 dimensions of learning agility to their specific brain networks.
And then we get to the really good stuff, the concrete evidence-based practices, the hacks for each one.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Before we get into the brain science, why does this specific thing, learning agility, matter so much? I mean, for the C-suite, for anyone really wanting serious career growth.
Well, what's fascinating is its predictive power. Learning agility consistently predicts leadership potential, performance, career velocity, often better than general cognitive ability or, standard personality tests.
Right, because leadership is all about navigating the unknown now.
Exactly. Navigating novelty is the job. So LA becomes the deciding factor.
And this isn't just a nice-to-have soft skill. This is measurable stuff, right?
Yeah.
What do we actually see in organizations where leaders have high learning agility?
The differences are quantifiable and pretty immediate. Organizations with stronger LA see performance ratings about 15% higher in their top group versus the bottom.
15%, that's significant.
It is. And even more compelling, these groups report a 25% higher innovation output. We're talking successful new product launches. And they're about 40% more successful in big transformation projects, like a digital shift or a merger.
So it's not just innovation, it's making change actually stick. But you mentioned there's a defensive side to it too, protecting the organization from failure.
Absolutely. Replacing a failed leader can cost over 200% of their salary. Developing LA can cut those transition failures by around 35%, which avoids these huge costs.
Wow.
But the really critical finding for you, for the listener, is this. Unlike something like general IQ, which is pretty stable in adulthood, learning agility is fluid. It can be developed. It can be strengthened.
So you can actually get better at it.
You can. And that's the entire premise of these neuroscience hacks we're going to talk about.
That sets the stage perfectly. So let's get specific. What are these 5 dimensions of learning agility we're targeting, and what's the neurobiological architecture we're trying to influence?
Right, because we need to know not just what they are, but why they map to specific brain functions. That's the heart of the research.
Okay, lay it out for us.
First up is mental agility. This is your cognitive complexity. It's about embracing ambiguity, seeing problems from new angles, making fresh connections.
Yeah, the brain link.
That's your prefrontal executive networks, the Center for Conscious Control, and the default mode network, the DMN.
Wait, you mentioned the default mode network. Let's pause on that, because for anyone multitasking, the DMN is really important. That's the part of the brain that lights up when we stop actively trying to solve a problem, isn't it?
Exactly. It's engaged during that reflective, sort of diffuse, unfocused thought. Mental agility needs both that sharp focus and this broad pattern recognition mode.
Fascinating. Okay, what's next in the structure?
Next is people agility. This is your social emotional competence. So, being open-minded, engaging well with different kinds of people, accurately reading a room.
So where did that show up in the brain?
This lights up some really complex social processing networks. You have the insula for emotional awareness, the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, which is linked to processing social pain.
Social pain.
Yeah, and error detection. And then the medial prefrontal cortex, which is key for theory of mind, basically, understanding what other people are thinking and feeling.
So the skill of managing a difficult board meeting is physically rooted in the same brain centers that handle your own feelings and your awareness of pain. That just shows how intense reading people truly is.
It does. It carries a high emotional load. Third is change agility. This is about your dispositional adaptability.
Meaning.
It means seeing change as an opportunity, staying effective when things are ambiguous, and, showing resilience when it all falls apart.
This sounds a lot like stress management. What's the hardware here?
So here we look at the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis.
The stress response system.
That's the one. It's the chemical mechanism that pushes you toward fight or flight. We also look at the mesostriatal reward circuits, which govern your motivation. Do you see a challenge as a threat to run from or a reward to chase?
That makes so much sense. How we frame risk in our brain determines our resilience. Okay, what about turning all that agility into actual results?
That's dimension 4, results agility. Delivering outcomes in new or unfamiliar situations through being resourceful, having drive.
And neurologically.
This one is rooted in the motor cortex and the hippocampus, which are involved in learning new skills and locking in memories, and also the ventral striatum, which is crucial for that reward-driven motivation. It's not just having the plan, it's the brain physically consolidating the skills to execute, even under pressure.
And finally, the one that holds it all together, self-awareness.
Correct. Self-awareness is having accurate insight into your own capabilities, your limitations, and your impact on other people. Neurologically, this is deeply tied to the medial prefrontal cortex, again, for self-referential thought, the insular cortex for internal body awareness, and that default mode network, again, for self-reflection.
Okay, here's where it gets really actionable for everyone listening. We're moving from theory to the evidence-based practices, the actual neuroscience hacks to optimize these networks. Let's start with boosting mental agility.
Right. Let's translate the science into things you can do tomorrow. For mental agility, the first hack is cognitive reappraisal and emotion labeling.
Emotion labeling.
Yes. Research shows the simple act of accurately labeling an emotion, we call it affect labeling, it significantly reduces amygdala activation. So just naming the feeling literally calms your brain down.
Can you explain that a little more? Why does just putting a name to the anxiety calm the brain? What's the bypass happening there?
Well, when you feel intense emotion, your amygdala, your threat detector, is firing like crazy. By consciously using the language centers in your prefrontal cortex to name that feeling, you shift the processing from that reactive limbic part of your brain to the more rational executive part. You're taking back control.
So instead of being swamped by stress, you just pause and mentally say, this is frustration or this is anxiety.
Yeah.
What's a good technique for that?
A really powerful one is called temporal contrasting. You ask yourself, how much is this thing that's stressing me out going to matter in a week, a year? It reframes the stressor, shrinks it. Johnson & Johnson actually implemented this training, and people reported a 28% drop in perceived stress.
That is a fantastic insight. So for you listening, if you're prepping for a huge meeting, the practice is to pause and name the feeling, not to push it down. And that physically calms your stress center. What's the second hack for mental agility?
Micro breaks and diffuse thinking. We already mentioned that learning and creativity are stronger when you switch between focused attention, your task network, and that diffuse reflection of the DMN.
So we shouldn't just power through a hard problem, which is what we're always told to do.
Exactly. The brain actually consolidates knowledge and makes those non-obvious connections when we are not focused. You need scheduled breaks. 5 to 10 minutes every 90 minutes or so.
Any specific kind of break?
A great technique is the nature exposure protocol. Just a brief walk outside. It kicks in your parasympathetic recovery response and engages that DMN. You'll come back with better insights.
There's hard data on this, right?
Yes. Microsoft Japan reported a 40% productivity improvement when they tried a 4-day work week that built in more of these micro breaks. It just shows that high performance is about intentional recovery, not just brute force.
Okay, let's move to people agility. How do we neurologically get better at the social, emotional side of things, especially with, difficult people?
For that, we use compassion meditation. Research shows that practices focused on cultivating goodwill, even for people you find difficult, can literally increase cortical thickness in the brain regions that support pro-social behavior.
Wait, you're saying it physically increases cortical thickness? So a brief daily practice, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, can structurally make me better at empathy.
That is the power of neuroplasticity. You're building the brain's muscle for understanding complex social signals. The Cleveland Clinic did this for their doctors and saw huge jumps in patient satisfaction and, critically, a drop in provider burnout. It helps you manage the emotional toll of dealing with people all day.
And then there's the often overlooked hack that impacts people, agility, sleep optimization.
Oh, this is so critical. Poor sleep makes your amygdala hyperactive. It impairs your ability to read emotions in other people. Sleep-deprived leaders are rated as less effective interpersonally because they misread cues and their own stress response is way over the top.
So being chronically tired doesn't just make you tired, it literally makes you a worse, maybe even a more toxic communicator.
Exactly right. And organizations need to support this. Set norms around after-hours emails to reduce the anxiety that wrecks sleep. Aetna actually had a program that paid employees to get 7+ hours of sleep. It was linked to about $3,000 in increased productivity per employee per year.
Wow. So sleep isn't a personal issue, it's a core performance lever.
100%.
Okay. Next up is change, agility, resilience. And this brings us to a really counterintuitive hack, strategic goal disengagement.
Right, and this is where we have to challenge that myth of never give up. While persistence is great, the ability to strategically walk away from a goal that has become unattainable is essential for your mental and physical health. People who can't let go of blocked goals have chronically elevated cortisol and higher rates of depression.
Hold on, that flies in the face of the whole dogged perseverance narrative we celebrate in leaders.
Yeah.
How do you square that with the neuroscience of knowing when to quit?
You have to differentiate between dedication to the mission and ego attachment to a specific method. Change agility is knowing when to pivot, not just sticking with a failing plan. Your brain's stress response is triggered by that mismatch between effort and failure. Letting go reduces the chronic stress.
So what's the technique to make that less painful?
Position new initiatives as experiments, not rigid commitments. It lowers the ego attachment. It gives you permission to fail fast and cheap. You see this at places like Amazon with their 2 pizza teams or Spotify's squads. They're built for hypothesis testing and rapid pivoting.
That's the organizational frame. But for the individual leader, how do you build that internal resilience?
That's the second hack here, fostering cognitive hardiness. This is really about adopting a growth mindset, the belief that your abilities can be developed. It reframes a step back as a learning opportunity, not a personal threat. The brain's reaction to mistakes shifts from defensive to curious.
Let's shift to results agility then, driving outcomes in new situations. How can we prep the brain for high performance before we even get there?
By leveraging mental practice and visualization, research shows that mentally rehearsing a complex task, whether it's a golf swing or a difficult conversation, produces neuroplastic changes that are nearly identical to actually doing it.
That's incredible. So before a big negotiation, you should just mentally run through the whole thing.
Exactly. Spend 5 or 10 minutes rehearsing what you want to do, what obstacles might come up, and this is key, visualize yourself recovering from a mistake. You're laying down the neural blueprint for success in your hippocampus and motor cortex.
That's powerful. What's the other hack for results agility?
Implementation intentions.
The science behind that.
So effective goals activate 2 different circuits. Motivation, which is the will, and planning, the way. Implementation intentions are simple if-then plans. They create an automatic link between a cue and a response, which bypasses the need for willpower in the moment.
Can you give us an example? How does a vague goal become a neuroscience-backed plan?
Okay, so instead of a vague goal like, I'm going to be more strategic, you create an implementation intention. If it is Monday at 8 a.m., then I will spend 15 minutes reviewing my strategic priorities before I check any email. That concrete link makes you dramatically more likely to actually do it.
You've outsourced the decision to a cue. Love it. Okay, finally, let's talk about enhancing self-awareness, the foundation for all of this.
Our first hack here is probably one you've heard of. Mindfulness and present moment awareness. Even 10 to 15 minutes of attention-focused meditation increases gray matter in the hippocampus, your learning center, and it actually shrinks the amygdala.
So you're not just feeling calmer, you're physically changing your brain's threat response system and boosting your ability to self-reflect.
Precisely. And for leaders, the communication hack to use is future-focused feedback, or what some call feed-forward.
Feed forward.
Yeah. The neuroscience shows that feedback focused on future possibilities activates more positive brain responses than criticism about the past.
Because criticism about the past just triggers all those stress and defensiveness circuits we've been talking about, right?
It's a neurological trigger. So instead of saying, in yesterday's meeting, you failed to integrate the financial data, you say, in your next presentation, you might try integrating the financials earlier to really strengthen the argument. Microsoft famously shifted their entire performance system to this model, from backward-looking reviews to forward-looking connects, and they saw huge increases in manager effectiveness.
So we have all these individual hacks. How do we connect this to the bigger picture?
Well, the individual hacks are incredibly powerful, but the systemic culture is what determines if they stick and stale.
And what's the single most critical piece of that systemic puzzle?
It's the power of psychological safety. Learning agility depends on experimentation, on risk-taking, on failing, and learning from it. That cannot happen in a place where people are punished for mistakes.
Right.
Google's big Project Aristotle study found psychological safety was the #1 predictor of team effectiveness. It was more important than anything else.
And leaders have to walk the talk, not just say the words.
Absolutely. Senior leaders have to model vulnerability, share their own mistakes publicly, show that they adjust their approach based on new data. And then you have to align your reward systems. Promotions and evaluations have to explicitly reward learning agile behaviors, not just flawless, rigid execution.
So what does this all mean for you as you're trying to navigate this VUCA world? We've seen that learning agility, it's not some fixed trait you're born with. It's a measurable capacity that you can enhance with these targeted neuroscience-informed practices.
Right. By focusing on regulating your amygdala with emotion labeling, strengthening your prefrontal cortex with micro breaks and those if-then plans, you can effectively rewire your brain to be a more adaptable leader.
You're getting the tools to make sure you're not part of that 40% failure rate.
Ex-
And to wrap up, we've spent some time on the importance of strategic goal disengagement, that neurological skill of knowing when to let go. And this raises, I think, an important question for you, the listener. If leadership success is now defined by adaptability, is the truly most agile leader the one who is celebrated for their dogged, painful perseverance even when the evidence says stop? Or is it the one who has mastered the neurological skill of letting go of a deeply invested but ultimately failing commitment?
Something to think about.
Definitely something to mull over as you integrate these hacks into your own learning journey. Thank you for joining the Deep Dive.